Okay, let's do a show. Hello, and welcome to Corpse Garden Chronicles. Unfortunately, my co-host Melanie has some technical difficulties and will not be able to join us. But with us today, we have Serena Mossgraves. Hi, Serena. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you. I do love being here.
If you will please tell us about you.
About me?
Yeah,
Ooh.
you're awesome. You make us happy.
Well, I do try. I like taking old stories and seeing how I can twist them, or new stories and seeing even more so how I can twist them. Sometimes that's fun too. I like the dark and sometimes the gothic, and I like seeing what I can make with it.
That is awesome. And of course, I'm obsessed with writing about haunted houses and ghosts, as you have probably seen. Because
Nothing wrong with that.
those things make me most happy when I read them. But all of the things I've read of yours always makes me happy. But okay. What do you think about the Corpse Garden theme?
I love it. You know, when I was in high school, and man, that was a while ago, one of the most fun the field trips that we went on. My English teacher in high school had this idea that it would be a good writing trip to take all of her class to a local graveyard. And it was meant to inspire. It inspired, all right. I was writing Gothic poetry even then. And I don't think she expected what she got out of me.
That is awesome.
Oh, yeah, it was a wonderful little graveyard, honestly.
When I was in elementary school, I don't know if we went so much as to inspire, but to teach. Because we had local people that were famous in one of the local graveyards, and we went to do etchings of the gravestones. And
that sounds
I
like
loved
fun.
that, just walking around the graveyard, and we had to find certain people, get etchings, and talk about what we learned. And it was awesome. And I think one of the most wonderful things that they did, other than that, was when we did the local tour of the town and told about the different places that were supposed to be haunted, the different things about phenomena like this gaseous stuff that would go up and down the railroad and sometimes come off and go into people's houses. So that was like one of the most wonderful things about being in elementary school whenever I was young.
That sounds like fun, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I remember any real fun trips in elementary school. All the fun trips happened in high school.
We did, in I think almost every grade or every other grade, go to the aquarium. That was like the only other fun thing we did that like has stuck in my mind. Because apparently fish.
The other fun trip that we had in high school, my 10th grade biology teacher had a habit. Every year he would take his 10th graders to the local zoo. And that man was interesting. He had a tarantula that he would let loose in his classroom. That was, I swear, that spider was my favorite. It would run around the classroom and just cause all sorts of trouble.
Oh my gosh.
I
Science class
love that thing.
and science club in high school at Northside Mountain School. Shout out to Mr. Byron for being one of the most awesome science teachers ever. He'd done all sorts of pranks. He's glued a squirrel to a phone of a fellow teacher. There's this one gas that smelled like vomit. So he has put a little bit on a piece of paper towel, and then he'd take it up and waft it around up and down the hall. And he would show us all sorts of things. He had one day for one of the experiments taken the whole class out, and we moved his minivan, picked it up, and moved it over. He would show us all sorts of fun science things, and when it comes to field trips, he'd find fun field trips to go. I loved going to the 3D theater. I forgot what it's called. And like having to lay back and watch the screen that's from the back of the theater all the way to the front floor, and it was amazing. It's like the river's coming straight at you. So
hmm
yeah, I loved that class.
My junior year, I don't remember which teacher it was, but one of the teachers helped the seniors pull the senior prank that year. Our principal that year had a VW bug, and the teacher helped the seniors take apart the VW bug and put it back together on the roof. So the principal's car was on the roof of the school because, of course, it was.
Why not?
Senior
That is
prank.
awesome.
The senior prank that year was brilliant.
That's one of the most epic ways to do a prank. And it's mind-boggling too. My car is on the roof. How did
Oh
they
yeah.
not do that?
Then my sophomore year, I don't know why, but the oceanography teacher decided to let one of the students in the senior year into the office after hours, and he filled all of the teacher mailboxes up with condoms.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a trip. The senior pranks at my high school were interesting to say the least.
Oh yeah. Dude. Although I can honestly say I'm not one of those people that wishes I could go back and redo school. I am one of those
I
people that's perfectly happy where I am now.
I barely made it out of school.
I
um,
barely made it out
I
of school.
I literally skipped school so much that on senior skip day, if I skipped it, I was going to fail. And the principal decided she wasn't going to allow that. So she shows up at my door because I was skipping, of course. She shows up at my door, and I was already late for school. She shows up and knocks on my door, and there I am in my pajamas. And I answer the door, yeah, get dressed, you're coming to school. No, I'm not. I already said I was skipping. And she said, yeah, you are because you're not skipping school today because you're not failing. Excuse me? You heard me. Get dressed. Well, crap. So I got made to go to school on senior skip day.
I was happy to graduate. I just wish math was not like the hardest thing ever to get through. It
I'm with
surprised
you.
me I got through math class. It really does. Because algebra and calculus, it's like my brain was not comprehending it well.
I actually did not ever take calculus. I only passed algebra literally because I blackmailed the teacher. She had a bad habit of flirting with everything that moved. And I threatened to tell on her if I didn't pass. Well, I passed. Problem is, they put me in Algebra 2 the next year, and I didn't know how to do Algebra 1. That was bad.
Oh yeah, I ended up having to redo algebra 2 and doing calculus at the same time, and I think that's the only way I passed because the two different teachers trying to teach me how to do it properly.
Funny thing is, I actually took a semester of physics in school. Yeah. I understood the science behind it. I actually did better at the science behind it than half of the students in the class. I couldn't get the math.
Yeah, the science is easier.
And the teacher was like, "Why do you not understand the math?" Because it's math. I told her. She just was like so mad at me because I couldn't understand the math behind the physics. I understood the science, so I should have been able to understand the math in her opinion. Nope. No. She was mad at me.
Nope. I can understand.
I still, to this day, I can understand the science in physics. It makes sense. Uh-huh. The math, not so much.
That I understand.
I could understand. I mean, I was reading in 4th grade, I was reading at a college level. Everything word-based or history-based, I was good with. Everything math-based, somehow I didn't understand it.
Yeah. That was me. I could read. I could comprehend. I have trouble with the mathing. And now my 4-year-old is doing better at multiplication tables than I was in like 4th grade.
Yeah.
And that's... parents, I recommend if you have tiny people, number blocks and alpha blocks. As long as you get the idea that it's British-based English, and they're going to start calling the faucet a tap, but they're going to pick it up. It was set up so easy that he picked it up like this, and he's gotten better at his colors and his alphabet. So number blocks and alpha blocks, parents, and Bluey, always Bluey. Only advice I'm giving.
Yeah, I'm actually little bit by little bit. My kids were too old by the time Bluey came through, and little bit by little bit, I'm picking up bits from the internet about Bluey, and I'm actually liking it.
Oh, I love it so much. I've bought everything that's been put out in the U.S.
Well, I was so careful with my daughter when she was little because I did not want to sit her down in front of just anything, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. I let her watch Dora because I liked the way Dora worked. I let her watch Sesame Street because Sesame Street. I did not let her watch Blue's Clues because I felt like Blue's Clues talked down to kids. And things like that. I was very picky about the kids' shows that I put her in front of. I loved Little Einsteins. That one was just, I loved that.
We still sing Little Einsteins randomly throughout the day. Just because he will start and I'll just start singing with him. So yeah, we love Little Einsteins too.
But there was, very, very particular about the shows that I let her watch. And I can't help thinking that I wish that Bluey had been around when she was little because I think that would have been a favorite.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, no, there was, like I said, I Blue's Clues. It felt like it talked down to the kids,
Oh yeah.
and Barney did the same thing. It talked down to the kids, and it's like, why would I want my kid to watch this?
I got tired of Barney when I was younger, so I didn't want to do it as an adult. My whole life is Shimmer and Shine, Bluey, Number Blocks, Alpha Blocks, and Paw Patrol.
Yeah, my grandbaby loves Paw Patrol, so I can see that.
Oh yeah, Blaze and the Monster Machines, that too. But there's only like one episode where I've had to just like kids. This is the one episode where I'm gonna tell you we don't do this. The one where they're explaining collisions and that if you go really fast in an object, this is going to happen. And I had to
Right,
stop them and say, this is a bad idea because this will happen.
right. We pretty much with Angel had to explain to her that things that happen on the TV are not things that we do in real life because otherwise she would have done them. And she would not have hesitated, you know?
Well, Josh
It,
figured out he could not be Superman one day when he busted his head open on the coffee table. So, yeah.
yeah, there's just no testing out things you see on TV. That's a bad idea.
Well, my girls are asked, is this something we can do? And if it's something I can do, we do it. And it's like my friend Mel Coleman had put in, oh, he wants to do that from the show. This is a way to do that from the show safely. So, yeah, the best part is having friends that are like, hey, this is how we can do that safely.
Yeah, safely is a good thing. So,
So, yeah, we now know how to do the glitter volcano thing. Thanks again, Mel. Yes, I have two
yeah.
awesome Mels.
Like
Well,
I said, it sounded pretty.
it was pretty on the show. It was gorgeous and it was sparkly, but it's a show about genies, so therefore it was a literal glitter volcano. So, yeah. So, okay, we're about 20 minutes in. We should probably get started on the stories, huh?
Probably.
Because I'm enjoying talking to you and I could do that for hours. You've probably already figured
Yeah,
that one out too. But,
and I probably could talk my head off without thinking about the time myself. So, yeah.
okay. Um, since Melanie's not here, we're going to postpone our story. There's something different about her until she can come back on, but I'm going to continue doing with one of my favorite authors, um, Apoptisis. Apoptisis. Okay, I have trouble with that word, but it's a great story, and I love everything K.T.Seto writes. So let's begin. The humming sound the ship made seemed muted. I mean, let me start over. I apologize. The humming sound the ship made seemed muted after the cacophony of the battle. How long had it been? He couldn't remember. William stifled the urge to move or touch the controls, knowing his salvation lay only in inaction. If he fired the thrusters too soon, he might miss. It was hard. Every instinct he had screamed for him to run as far and as fast as possible. Every bone in his body hurt. Every muscle felt as if some mad and vicious thing had chewed on him and spit him out instead of swallowing. Bone deep pain, the kind that lingered and followed you into the darkness of sleep, was his only companion, shouting its presence in the silence blackness that grew larger and more encompassing as he drifted away. The pod could have held more than one person, three tops if they were small. There wasn't any other cargo. It held another it held enough rations for two humans for a month, enough air and water for longer if you stayed calm and immobile. He'd once heard of someone who survived in a pod like this for almost an Earth year. They'd been in suspended animation and their oxygen requirements had been minimal in that state. Hopefully, he wouldn't need to be here long. Hopefully, someone safe found the vessel before he ran out of options. It was comforting to know that he had options unlike those he'd left behind. Though they were few, the reality of having more to look forward to than just death soothed him. A balm for his shattered nerves. He'd been tested beyond the realm of his previous imaginings by the last few days. Yet he'd learned how strong he was, how deep the determination to survive ran through his veins. If he closed his eyes now, he would probably see the faces of those he'd left behind in the ship. Their faces and what he'd done, how he'd changed them, left his mark until nothing remained, nothing human, that is. William looked out the window at the rapidly retreating point of light that had been his home for more than 2 years. The light came from the incineration of the ship's interior fixtures sealed away from the vacuum of space by layers of metal and silicone composites that made up the hull, but to the unaware it would be normal lighting of the freighter. A metal tomb that burned merrily in place because there hadn't been a breach from the outside. No destruction had come from within. His trajectory, providing he caught the solar wind stream he aimed for, would take him a long loop towards Mars and potentially safety. If he didn't catch it, he still might get drawn into the slight gravity well of one of Mars' many moons, which still offered him the chance for salvation. But it would take longer. Options, paths to take, all of them leading away from was into what might be built on the ashes of his former life, a life that ended in pain. The pain was nothing compared to the fear. It was fear that held him immobile more than anything else. Fear that he hadn't left anything behind. Fear that something had clung to him or the pod. That something remained. Something that even now lay in wait for him to let down his guard so it could get in and do to him what it had done to his crew. For the moment, all he could feel was fear, the same suffocating madness that had been his constant companion for the last 4 years. When he'd begun to see the creatures lurking behind their eyes, begun to fear the faint hissing in their throats when they spoke, watching them change, watching the metamorphosis had stolen most of his logic, stifled his ability to think, to reason, trapped. He'd been trapped in the ship with them as they shifted from human to something other, and back again before his eyes. That was the worst part of this, beyond the pain, beyond the terror. The knowing they had changed, that something had stolen who they were, now looked out of their eyes, speaking with the same voices but not, knowing everything they knew but warping it, using it to further some agenda He couldn't fathom because he wasn't one of them anymore. He wasn't like them. They were new, and he had been left behind, chosen to remain unchanged, unincluded in the newness of what they were. There hadn't been any choice really but to do what he'd done, not at all. The panel before him beeped and struggled to beeped and he struggled to lift his head to look at the readout. The pod wasn't automatic. He had to function. He had to actively work the controls in order to do anything at all, although it could be controlled remotely from the ship. He leaned forward slightly, his head spinning and vision graying out from the pain. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw his reflection in the window. Something about it felt wrong. The thought the thought sent adrenaline shooting through his veins. William turned his head, working to keep the breathing even, not to waste oxygen, ignoring the now steady beep of the panel. Closing his eyes, he stilled himself to look at his face. Someone else looked back at him. The scream built somewhere in his gut and erupted from his mouth before he registered the need to make it a sound. It took longer to realize the sound come from him. For a moment, the horror of what he saw overwhelmed his senses, and he struggled against the restraints on his chair, not remembering having, having fastened them, but knowing he'd had to have it done. After all, no one had helped him into the pod. No one had been alive to help him. He'd killed them, stabbed out their eyes to get at the thing hiding behind them. Hiding in plain sight, he remembered using his slim metal knife, his arm moving again and again. The hot wash of blood and the stink of death mixing with the sanitizing agents the shipbuilders fused into the recyclers. They were dead. He'd killed them all because they'd changed and he had it, and no one would be safe until he removed the threat, that possibility of a threat, by removing them. 1 second. William stared. The steady beeping of the panel adding a throbbing counterpoint to the wild thudding of his heart, and he struggled to regain his control and figure out what was wrong. What was different about the reflection he saw in the dull shine of the window? Terror swamped him, filling his nose with the scent of his sweat, and the sour copper stench of blood, until he felt the slim, steady steam of tears falling and pooling on his chin. He tried to raise his hand to wipe them away and realized he couldn't. Tearing his gaze away, he looked down and saw his arms were bound to the rest, restrained individually, one to each side. The crash restraints for jumps, locking his limbs in place to cushion and protect them from the G-force of high-speed maneuvers. Had he made a jump? No, he'd killed them. He set the oxygen tanks to explode, and he'd gotten into the escape pod alone, because they were all dead. He closed his eyes, the tears falling faster, remembering Renate's face. The look of surprise as he thrust his knife into her eye and dug out what was hiding there. The look of fear and horror frozen in a single instant of pain, then nothing because her eyes were gone. The beeping began to slow, and he looked back at the console, his eyes drawn to the screen before him again, the unusual display replaced by a steadily decreasing series of numbers. A countdown to what? He tried to remember. Renate, Z, Morgan, Alf, Logan, Daniel. Screaming faces, missing eyes. All of the things blocking them so they couldn't see him, didn't hear him, or know him. He'd had to do it. He had to. The tears came faster, fell harder, and his chest hitched, his nose clogging shut. He moaned and cried into the stillness. His friends, his crew, like family. He shook his head to clear it, saw something else. Someone floating, tethered to the far end of the small cabin. Not in the other seat, but near the floor, Renate. As he'd seen her last, the empty sockets of her eyes blackened and shriveled, the edges crusted with dried blood. He wanted to scream, but found he lacked the breath for sound. Lacked the breath because something was wrong with the air. He could feel it now. The heat, the scent of rotten eggs, the beeping distracted him again. William struggled to make sense of anything, but there was too many parameters, too many questions, and no answers, just a hollow sound, his shuddering tears, and the beeping of the panel as it counted down. His vision blurred again. He tried to shake his head to clear it, realizing his movements were slower, his eyes closed. He forced them open again, trying to remember what he'd forgotten. He needed to see to make sure nothing remained so he could be sure he was safe. Was he safe? Did he get them all? He couldn't remember. He looked over at the floating form again. It was Renee, her dead empty eyes staring back at him accusingly. You did this, William. You. Cut the eyes from her head. Stop the beat of her heart. What did you see? Is it staring back at you in the window? He shuddered and tried to take a deeper breath, but couldn't. The air was wrong, but somehow that didn't scare him as much as it should have. He tried to smile. I had to save you, Renee, because I love you, he whispered and closed his eyes. The pod finally floated far enough away they knew they would be safe. Daniel nodded to Z. She ran her fingers slightly over the screen, firing a single missile. She stared after it in silence, like the other occupants of the room, the gravity of the moment too heavy for mere words. The bright flash of the explosion momentarily blinded them, and she blinked several times to clear her vision before standing and walking towards the door. We didn't have a choice, Z. You know there's no hope once they have it. Daniel's voice halted her, and she looked back and nodded. He would have killed us all or given it to us. You did the right thing, made the right choice, Z said, then left. The others trickled out behind her. Daniel stared out the window, looking at the small cloud of debris spreading out in a circle from where the pod once floated. He was captain now. Not the way he'd thought to get the promotion, but William had caught it. There was no cure. The only way to protect them all from so far from home. Only one way to keep them all sane. The brutality of the solution left a sour taste in his mouth. William had been a good man once, a good friend. That was all just a memory now. Memory is what is left when nothing else stays. A stain on the soul, only time washes away. Pain and memory intertwined, drifting away until only a ghost of it remains. Daniel activated the screens for the windows and turned to walk back to the upper deck, shaking off a bit of his melancholy and the need to do his duty. It would be another week before they were all in the clear for sure. No one else had contracted the virus. For now, he would do what he needed to do. He owed it to the rest of them to make do today. Answers would have to wait. He caught his reflection in the shining surface of the metal doors leading to the bridge. Was there something on his face? That was an interesting story. Hold on a second. There it is. What did you think of that the first time you read it?
I loved it. K.T.'s always been a wonderful writer. She definitely has a ability to catch a hold of the story and lead you where you need to go, and a very good habit for description.
Oh, yeah. So many things came to mind. Event Horizon, Alien, any virus at all that could mess with the brain.
I
She I have yet to find anything of hers that I have hated.
I'm with you on that, honestly.
So, you wrote this next one,
You did.
and it is beautiful and fun and fits the month well. Please.
I titled it Apocalyptic Fruits. The world went to hell, and the human race damn near went with it. It's been about a year since the latest incident. A year of nothing even resembling normalcy. Death follows me across a broken and hollowed out land. We pause here. I just start at the beginning, with introductions. I can give you the bull about being a pale rider. It really is too cliche, even if it feels true. I am the one who ended the world. My arrogance for is why the majority of the humans hide now. I was so sure of what I was doing. I thought being God was worth it. Now, I'm not so sure. My name, if it really matters, was Tracy Campbell. I was a scientist in one of the various labs for the CDC. Our job was to find out the cause of disease, to prevent the so-called super flu from being created. Or at least that is what the world was told. We mostly tried to stop the disease coming in the air from the tear between the worlds. I decided to take it one step further. Sounds silly. I was researching the idea that disease was only effective on humans. Other races had been spotted, vaguely. I thought if I could bring one of them through, just a little bit, I could get some blood and find the cure to the incurable. The original incident was before my time. The nuclear bombs dropped across the world during the World Wars had torn what was believed to be several holes into other realms, just none as wide and as open as the one I did. Other realms could be seen through the rifts, and it brought a greater amount of disease whenever the opening was spotted. They moved, you see, appearing stronger in some places than others. The determination was made that the air quality on the other side was hazardous. That was really the only thing about the other side that we could determine. When the rifts opened, we at the CDC would have to open quarantine areas and research the diseases that rampage the contained areas. So I often got to see the thin veil of smoke that kept our world from bleeding into darkness on the other side. I watched as large demonic shape passed by what seemed like a smoke-filled doorway into insanity. Nothing ever came through the smoke until I broke the veil. The heat also spiked where the breaks opened. After a time, we started to call the rifts portals to hell. I let my ambitions make my choices. The government was looking for ways to fix the atmosphere, even if it was a political mess. There were projects that had been testing to see if there were projects that had been testing to see if since nuclear fission had caused the rifts, could nuclear fusion close them. There was also testing on laser and cold weapons in hopes that one of them making the rifts shrink in size. Not one of them was having the desired result. Back then, I was a ravenous reader. Though since the latest incident, reading is nearly impossible. Books are so much antiquities of a bygone era. I used to read anything of interest. I would spend my spare time when I was not working, nearly devouring and all things I could find. The openings were something that had held my attentions from early on. As part of why I pursued a career in the CDC, I wanted to be close to them. The only ones allowed near the rift were the scientists, so I convinced everyone that I was a scientist. I was a child, looking for someone to tell me I had done a good job. Though I did the schooling and such to hold the title, I sped through the school with the speed of a fool. There were several sorts of creatures who came through when the breaks fully opened. There were the large demons and the small methods. There were also other sorts. My original theory was made without any true idea of what was on the other side. I had since found that some of the creatures had antibodies that could help us, those humans who are left. The larger demons decided immediately that humans were food, so any who were unable to get underground were quickly devoured. The demons are too large for the majority of the underground tunnels. The Mephits, a much smaller breed of demons, eat rocks and minerals, so they're less of a threat. Considering they're small enough to sneak into human encampments, this was a major relief. The Mephits also kept some of the other creatures from invading. Many of the remaining human settlements keep them as pets, early alarm systems, if you will. The Mephits' wail could wake dead, and when the larger demons got within a mile radius, they would wail. As long as I don't display my credentials, I'm welcome in any camp. My actions are not known, and that is likely why I still live. The CDC is still held to blame, though. I may not be known, but the fact that it was one of us is known. So many of my co-workers' lives survive. Science is often an evil witchcraft in the society that exists now. The worst threat to mankind didn't come through the rift. The worst threat is always, as it has been, ourselves. It has taken me most of the apocalypse to figure that out. There are now gangs that travel overland. If you escape the demons, which are visible for miles, you still have to avoid gangs. They take whatever they want, and either rape or kill any that they catch. Most are human, but there is the occasional other involved. One of the patrols that the former New York City has One that patrols the former New York City has what is termed an orc with them. Large tusks and a porcine face, large muscular frame. There are a few new races that will help you if you find yourself alone on the surface, but most will gladly assist in harming you if you're caught above. I traveled to help save those I endangered. I have learned the hard way how to fight. I have learned when to hide. I have a pet method I call Blame, who eats fire. I have an orc friend who taught me how to kick ass. He's nothing like the others of his kind who came through the breach. K.T.Seto is his name. He taught me how to handle a club and some hand-to-hand combat. He's soft-spoken and often thinks before he speaks. He has never been welcome among the humans. Fear of the unknown has always been the strongest of humanity's flaws. I will occasionally go in and gather supplies for us, and I return them in our somewhat nomadic ways. I am still human, but I find that with each passing day I feel less so. Humanity is corrupt and waves their flaws about like a flag, and I feel like I'm to blame for their fall. Whether it is true or not, it is how I see things. I think that I know how to close the rifts. I've spent every waking moment I could spare researching the rifts. That's why I'm writing this. If I fail, I want those who come after me to know what I tried. I want to tell myself that I am honestly a real scientist, finally. Sealing the breach will not stop the creatures who are already on this side. It will only stop more from entering our world. Only the one fissure actually opened, although 5 are now visible at any given time. So if we can close the only open one, maybe we can keep the others closed the same way. The air around the rift has several elements in it that are not found in our normal atmosphere. I've done a chemical cocktail up. List of ingredients will be attached separately. It should react with the otherworldly atmosphere. It may be a suicide attempt to set this off. Seems only fair. I screwed everything up. So, if I can fix it, well, I gotta try. I gathered both the supplies for the cocktail and safety gear so that I might survive. We will have to see. Closing the rift will mean learning to deal with those who are already on this side, including the humans. I believe if the break is sealed, we can kill the large demons to make the world safer again. Then things will settle into a semblance of normal, even if normal no longer looks like we expect it to. Our innocence was lost when the rift in the sky first opened. We were no longer alone in the world, much less in the universe. My actions merely stopped questions of what was on the other side. So I had hopes that my actions this time would help the world find a semblance of balance. From here on, I will leave the tale in the hands of a dear friend. If I return to finish it, I will. If not, then it will be released as my apology to a world I helped to build. May I eventually be forgiven. The demons surrounded the gate, each standing well over the size of a 3-story building. For a time I watched, unsure of what they were doing. There's 6 of them surrounding the hole into nowhere. Every so often, one would try to step back through, and the others would attack the one making the attempt. This is when I paid more attention to the one that kept making the attempt. Bleeding from several scratches, covered in bites, it was weakly standing. None of the others seemed to be trying for the rift. Its eyes were roaming wildly across each of them as though trying to find a way out. I never honestly thought I would feel pity for one of the big ones. Still, in that moment, it seemed like killing it would be merciful. Dead demons could provide no information, though. Tichet pointed at a steel building on the other side of the rift. If you had a distraction, his scratchy whisper, barely audible, you could get the injured one in now, maybe even find answers. As I sat processing his idea, he took off, making as much noise as he could. I was too stunned to call him back, even if I could. Instead, I quickly gathered what wits remained, and after a small prayer from my friend, set to getting that damned demon into the metal building. It seemed to understand my presence quicker than I did. Unsure if it could speak or understand speech, I motioned for it to follow me and headed to what was originally an airport hangar. It followed with no hesitation. I hesitated to close the door behind us for fear it would keep Tichet out. Still, it would keep the other demons from finding us, and that was why he did this. I realized that there was more to rescuing the demon than just knowledge. Sometimes you had to do what was right, even if it was against you in the long run. The stench wafting from the creature was nauseating. Strong copper and sulfur mixing to overwhelm all of my senses. I decided that I needed to find my friend and escape the suddenly closing walls of this building. I tried to find an exit that would allow me to escape without leaving the creature exposed, and heard a soft knocking sound at the building's back door. Nervous, I went and checked outside. To my absolute relief, Tichet was standing there. Quickly, I pulled him in and considered reading him the riot act. No sooner than I closed the door, we felt the rumbles of the demons return. Quiet was needed for the moment. I could say giving him a piece of my anger until it was safe, whether I wanted to or not. Demons are thankfully not known for being the most patient of souls. We were only waiting maybe 5 minutes, if that, before we heard them stomping off. Tichet waited for a few minutes more, just in case. Demons have been seen to have exceptional hearing, although very little intelligence to go with that hearing. Once we were sure they were gone, he raised his hand and motioned that we still had one to deal with. Though I knew he was right, it bothered me. His recklessness, though typical of his species, upset me. A human failing, for sure. Orcs are strong-willed and reckless. Often they are also physically stronger than most humans. Most do not have a concept of fear. Tichet is rare of his kind. He has a strong sense of honor and compassion. I watched as he was starting to minister to the wounded demon, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The sound of my own heart was deafening me. I couldn't look away, though I desperately wanted to be anywhere else at that moment. Since the schism opened, racism took on a new meaning. There were dozens of new races all fighting to survive. Choosing to dislike someone for the color of their skin was even more idiotic now that humans were an endangered species. Almost all of the other races chose to keep to themselves. Elves are tall, slender creatures that look down their noses at everyone else. Gnomes are quick-witted small people who seem to be able to handle tools like an extension of themselves. Orcs were one of the few that didn't seem to care. For me, though, it wasn't about humans and orcs. This was my best friend, my only friend, and I damn near lost him because he's reckless. It took me a moment to cause the noise in my heart. When I did, I was amazed at what I was hearing. Tichet and the demon were conversing. I didn't even know the demons could talk. I listened silently as the horrific story unfolded. According to the demon, the rift only stayed open because of a spell that was still active on the other side. The demons had sorcerers that continued to recast spells every so often. This world was rich in resources and food that had long ago dried up on the other side. The demon spoke of feeling guilty. His guttural voice grew even huskier as he spoke of his home, of all that he was missing from that side. I started to wonder if I had hit my head when the demon said that he was trying to leave, but was prevented because the others were afraid. Afraid that if the rift closed, the air here would clear. Toxins in the air were what kept the demons healthy. This broke through my haze. I rushed up and blurted out the question, suddenly burning in my weary mind. What do you mean, toxins? What is it that is coming through the opening? And if the rift closed, would the air clear? Both the demon and Chet had forgotten that I was there, obviously. The demon recovered quicker than Chet did. The toxins are particles of the air in our home. We may be able to survive without it. I just don't want to find out. Neither do my brethren. The air here would likely return to normal. I'm not sure. There really is only one way to find out. I need to go through and close the door on my side. Chet quickly nodded. We can help to distract the others if you think you can get there. We won't be a distraction for long, though, so you would have to be quick. I had to protest. Can't he do it now while they're gone? Why does he need us? I realized almost subconsciously how childish that sounded. Believe me, it didn't sit well. So I sighed my agreement. Why not? Today was just as good as any for me to die. Just as long as I was not stuck alone after all was said and done. Quietly, I listened as the plan was laid out. I saw flaws in it, but found myself afraid to speak. What was it about that moment that had me frozen? Still, without spells ending, none of my plans would work either. Chet and I agreed to run a lookout and distraction while the demon tried to enter the portal. It sat wrong with me that we were trusting that creature even as far as we were. Normally, I would be asking a million questions. That day, I was completely mindless. Though I was considering using my original plan as backup. Blow up the portal, even if it reopens. Maybe I could take a few of the big ugly bastards with it. Though it felt to me like we sat planning this for hours, truthfully, only moments passed, from us entering the building and us leaving. The other demons were not in sight, so it honestly looked like we were going to get off scot-free. I should have known it wouldn't work that way. It never does. It always has to go wrong. We were perhaps the length of a football field from the rift when Chet called out a warning as he spotted them coming back. The one who was going home took off a run. The ground shook, making it harder to move. He was far faster than I had imagined, which meant so were they. Chet started screaming and running the opposite way, and I ran towards the rift. I needed to set up the backup plan, plus I was supposed to call out if they turned towards us. To be honest, I was unsure if they had even spotted Chet or myself. The big guy was a little hard to miss. Still, when we were planning, the big guy told us that the larger demons were near blind. They saw based on sound. So for all that he was making the ground shake, our demon was being stealthy and quiet. Chet was the one making all of the noise. I found myself amazed that it was really working. The demon made it through the rift quicker than I could have expected. He passed through it like it was a silk curtain. and mere moments later it started to slowly close. The backup plan unnecessary, I found myself stunned and staring. The air took a while to clear, but we saw a difference in the big demons almost immediately. They could breathe without toxins, but they were stumbling and struggling to remain upright. They would be easy to defeat. I found out later that many of the ones who remained were killed when they started to stumble. K.T.Seto and I both survived. We're still partners, and I like to think that this world is recovering from the mistakes of the past. I watch to be sure the breach is left closed, and I'm prepared if I ever need to try and close it again. Yeah.
Okay, now I think I'm unmuted. That is fun. That is scary. The thing is, I grew up living near a nuclear plant. I don't know if you've ever heard of Saudi Daisy, but in Saudi Daisy, there's a nuclear plant, and I had nightmares about that because of the Terminator movie. You know that scene at the beginning where she watches everybody blow off in dust in the wind? Thing is,
Yeah.
I was in my backyard and my grandmother, mom, and sister would do that. So I can picture nuclear anything doing just about anything thanks to my nightmares. And then all of the creatures that came through, the dwarfs sound most fun. I want to learn from dwarfs.
They all seem fun to me, honestly.
Oh, they all seem fun. It's just I want to get better at what I'm doing here. And you're helping you and Patty and all the other authors are helping me with all of that, but also getting better at fixing things. That sounds great.
Just taking the time to tell people what you're seeing sometimes is enough. Because that's what most people don't do. They don't take the time to go, hey, this is how I see things. And that a lot of times is enough. And it makes a difference. And people don't realize that.
Mhm. That yeah, that definitely does. I agree. Being able to talk to people and find out their points of view on how they see something. Oh no, you're back.
Oh, that was weird.
I have no idea. Just disappeared for a second.
That was so weird. It just kind of did a circular thing on my screen. It just kind of went whoop, and then it was gone
Ah,
back
your
in.
internet dipped for a second. I've had that happen.
It's so weird.
But yeah, that was fun. I being afraid of not being able to breathe, I can understand that too from their point of view. But then again, I have asthma. And when you
So
get to
do
that
I.
part, I'm like, "Oh my gosh." See it from their point of view. They've crossed over into an unknown land to look at what's happening, and then you find out if I go too far, I can't breathe.
Yep.
Point of view is interesting. But yeah, I love it.
And that's part of the fun. If you go and look at any story from a separate point of view, it's going to change the story entirely.
That's why there for a little while you had stories coming out from the two point of views of the main characters. Like the Twilight, like the 50 Shades of Grey. Those are the top two that come out in my mind.
That's why my Rust Junkyard and the zombie book
Uh-huh.
I did not do chapters. I did different points of view. Um, instead of chapters, it's written in each of the characters' point of view. Like the main characters are Chris, Shara, Tara, and Lizzie. And I think Amara was the other one. Chris is the dad, and Tara is his sister, and Amara is the mom. And I think Lizzie's his sister as well. And then Shara is his daughter. And the whole story, the zombie apocalypse happens, and I might get a couple of the characters mixed up because my brain is not with me right now, but zombie apocalypse happens, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and Chris is trying to protect family. And Chris is ex-Marine. And Lizzie's a scientist. And Tara's I think she was an ex-SEAL, if I remember the character right. And current cop in town.
Yeah.
And whole situation is going to be different from each of their point of view. So instead of trying to tell the story all from Chris's point of view, I hold it from I took a slice of it from Chris's point of view, and then I took a slice of it from Tara's, and a slice of it from Amara, and I made it where each of them, their slices went together, and sometimes they overlapped.
Yeah.
And that story came together better because it was told by all of them, not just one. I couldn't have told it just Chris.
Oh, yes.
Chris could not have told that story by himself. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense because Robert A. Heinlein, his Number of the Beast story had been done the same way. The whole book is told from Sharpies, Jake's, Zebby's, and Deja Thoris's DT's point of view, DD's point of views as he goes through, but Don DeChanty's Castle Perilous series, he tells it from each chapter is split up either from Incardinite's point of view, or you have the group of people's point of view, because there's a couple of groups of friends that end up going in different directions because of what happens in Castle for Rent. So you see it from one group's point of view, and I think you definitely see more of one character's point of view, but you get pieces of another, which was really good. I definitely recommend that series too, the Castle Perilous series, if you like fantasy and castles and interdimensional doorways. But that I love it, finding stories from multiple people's different points of view, because it seems like you can get more out of it. What is your favorite horror story?
Oh, no, that's a hard one because it depends on the writer.
Do you have a few that pop up in mind?
Yes. Like, if you were to ask me what my favorite by Raz is, I am a big fan of his story that is in the Fae Playground book, the Fairy Playground, The Boy in the
That
Closet.
oh, yeah.
Love that one. Um, but like, if you were to say one, my favorite from like Stephen King, Salem's Lot. That one scared the hell out of me.
Oh,
And
we love Salem's
that
Lot.
one, I love it. And the odd thing about that is they've never been able to put that one to film as good as the story is in the book.
No, it's not. I agree.
I've seen them do wonders with some of his work, but that particular one they've not been able to get anywhere close at all. Um,
Josh's Horcrux is Salem's Lot. He had been in a car accident and bled all over his mom's copy. So she just gave it to him, and it's on a shelf in the living room, and we just call it his Horcrux.
that's actually pretty cool. I would say that is an awesome Horcrux to have. I mean, seriously.
Yours
Um,
is probably The Death of Neverland, because I love fairy tales and I love what you did with that story. That is not whatever
I
I ever expected to have come out of that story, but I loved every single minute of it.
I enjoyed writing that one actually. But an oddity as far as stories go, one that I did not expect to be as a favorite is a movie. And this is going to sound odd because I'm not a movie person in general. Okay. I'm really not. And the reason is because, and I've been told I'm desensitized. I might be. It's not a horror movie, it's a ghost story. Okay. It's spooky AF. And I say that with reason. It came out in the 1940s. It's a black and white movie. And it's called The Uninvited. And they've done a movie since then called The Uninvited, but it's not the same one. This is a black and white 1940s movie called The Uninvited. It's a ghost story. And it is so spooky. And it is so good. I love this movie. This movie is absolutely, and it's one of those that you don't expect to enjoy, but the story is so good. You know? My grandmother was absolutely a good storyteller, and
Mhm.
this was one of her favorite movies. And she would she would sit there and have me listening to um, old radio programs and such as that.
Mhm.
And this was one of those that you had to really use your imagination. It didn't have a whole lot of special effects, but it had the story elements in it,
Mhm.
and I loved it. And it's odd, but that's the type of thing that I enjoy. I enjoy the things that you have to use your mind to pick up on. It's not, well, everything's done for you because those they run the story with it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah. And the thing is, I totally agree. And I found out that after school that Josh and I were of the same mind. I don't know if you've ever read the book The Giver. But at the end,
That's
both of us had the same project in 2 different schools. Tell what you think happened at the end. And of course, both of us had the morbid thoughts about what happened. They went off in the wilderness with nothing, and they
right.
were young. What happens when you go off in the wilderness with nothing?
Yeah.
If you're not trained ahead of time on how to survive, mm-mm. So I love stories that make you stop and think. I love stories that are different from the normal.
I do too. I find that if a story is going to make me stop and think, then I'm more likely to actually um, you know, enjoy it.
Oh yeah. Okay. We are going on over an hour. How about we end here and come back next time? On next episode, we have special guest star Raz T. Slasher, and he's going to read us a story. And awesome. Thank you, Serena, for being here. Please tell us where to find you, and also you can look in wherever we hide the descriptions above and below.
Um, well, I'm most everywhere at uh, Serenity Fall. Like if you go to Twitter or Facebook or whatever, Serenity Fall, that's me. Um, and I'm pretty sure that the Fae Corps has a reading list for me. Oh, I think it's Serena Mossgraves. I don't know for sure. It's probably down in the description.
It's somewhere over there. I know there are books. I have found them there on the website.
Yeah. I I leave all that up to Patti. She's better at that than I. You know how that goes. So,
Oh, yeah.
all
Okay.
right.
And I'm at Friday with the Library in the Blue Box is my page. I also have the group Friday Blues Disorganized Library, and of course, all things Fae Corps. I'm somewhere over there doing things all the time. So yeah, definitely come send us there if you want to message any. If you want to message Fae Corps, I'll get you back to Patti or Serena. Either way, thank you for being here, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.